money. Eskom can redirect it, redeploy this capital somewhere so that we are able to continue to sweat this asset, the fleet of generating units that Eskom has installed. So I think it's in that we reveal these numbers, we are able to excavate them so that we are able to dispel the myth that Eskom is doing everything in its power to save the date of the 29th of May. I've said it previously that I will not pick up a call and say to Dr. Mteto, please do the following to save the grid. Huh? He will do it. And the respect I have, he will not even, I will not pick up the phone, I will not do it. He knows he has to protect the interest of Eskom. By extension, the grid must be protected, and everything they are doing is against their plan, and they are unlikely going to deviate from that. The best that we can do is to support them in the work that we are doing, and thank you very much, the team, for this exceptional work. And again, as I conclude, just the trend line over a period of the year, what are we seeing? The big number for me there is column number 4 that talks to the UCLF. Because that's something that we seek to drive down. At this stage, we're sitting at about 17,393 megawatts. That is the amount of megawatts that is installed, but the economy was not benefiting from because we're not the units were not generating. That number now is sitting at 11,000. So I'm talking about the weekly moving average. It's sitting at 11,222 megawatts. So essentially it's about 6,000 megawatts to the better. Again, put it into context. When Eskom released their winter outlook, they assumed that number is going to be sitting at 14,000 megawatts. So they're already surpassing what their winter outlook is. So someone might ask, is that, okay, so you are under promising and over delivery. No, that's not the case. What the system operator does, looks at your previous performance, anchors the assumptions on the previous performance, not what the expectations are. The fact that you are surpassing the expectation, that's good for the system operator. So it's important that we have to have an appreciation on how this gets to be configured. And like I said previously, that there's a structural improvement in that if you look at the Eskom winter outlook of 2023, the assumption was that the baseline was 15,000 megawatts. 2024, the baseline is 14,000 megawatts. We are seeing a trend that suggests that if you go to 2025, the outlook is likely going to be lower than 14,000 megawatts. What that number is, the system operator will make a determination. But at the current trend, you will see that it's likely going to be lower than 14,000 megawatts. And of course, maintenance now, planned maintenance were tapering down as a result of now preparing ourselves going into the winter. Like other people were saying, no, but winter there's going to be a peak in demand. Absolutely correct. And that's why in the calculation of the team is that during periods of lower demand, that's the December period transitioning into January, very aggressive. Now they are retaining the units so that it corresponds with the peak demands that is anticipated going into the winter. What's the point I'm making? Is that there's a science, there's a philosophy that underpins Eskom's approach on how we are dealing with this question going into the future. And I really want to take the opportunity once more to say thank you very much to the men and women of Eskom, patriotic, competent, and committed to the resolution of this problem, of course, led by the board and its chair, Dr. Mteto, and at the management level, the group CEO, Mr. Marokani, Generation, and Mr. Numalo. Thank you very much, the team from Generation, for the work that you are doing. We'll convey that when we go to the various power stations. So thank you very much, TK. I think we are ending here. I've spoken about the issues of the winter plan, the issues of the PCLF. And then, of course, Eskom has done a winter outlook. And of course, we are confident in the next 7 days, the outlook still suggests that we should still not have a situation of load shedding because of the kind of work that the team is doing. Part of the benefits we are drawing from this performance, that although late in the week last week we experienced a number of units failing, but because of the improving health of this performance of the fleet, there was no need to initiate the intensification of, to initiate load shedding. What we did was then to rely on the OCGTs to carry us through that period. And the expectation is that these units are going to are going to return incrementally this week. So that's the benefit we have when the system becomes healthier and healthier. The point I've been making previously, now there's some degree of headroom. So when that headroom diminishes, it's such that you still have some degree to move because you initiate the engagement of OCGTs, and they're the ones who have been able to carry us momentarily through that period. And when the units come back, of course, you recede on the OCGTs, and by definition, diesel. And it's again thanks to the excellent work of the men and women at Eskom. I mean, this is tremendous work that they are doing. And of course, we'll continue to update the rest of the country on the kind of performance that is being registered. So thank you very much, TK, for the opportunity.
Minister, thank you very much for the valuable insights and information. Colleagues, with that, I will now open the floor to questions from members of the media. And as our established protocol, we'll start with the members of the media who are in the room, followed by those who would have shared their questions on our online platform. Please do introduce yourself and the media house that you represent before you pose your question. The floor is open. By a show of hands, we are ready to take questions. You can go ahead, Katla.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Katla Walogodi from the SABC. We saw Eskom in the newspapers over the weekend, excuse me, and this was over allegations made by Eskom forensic auditor Dorothy Mnucci, who was claiming that she has been targeted and she's fearing for her life. So in the weekend newspapers, we see her alleging here that Eskom has bypassed the processes to investigate here her claims and saying that as far as she's concerned, her former boss, Mr. Chris Baloyi, is back at work, and it doesn't look like Eskom has taken some of the claims that she alleged and her concerns in terms of her life serious. Maybe can you just give us an update as Eskom and the Minister of what has been done, what is happening in terms of investigations of corruption at Eskom? I know that Mr. Marokani steps into this particular portfolio where there were a raft of allegations made as well by Mr. Andre de Ruyter. When he left office, we saw also Scopa investigating. They were here at Eskom doing their in-local inspections, looking at some of these allegations. Where are we in terms of investigations as we're looking at stabilizing the entity and loading Eskom for turning a corner? In terms of those allegations, we can't just sweep them under the carpet. How are we doing with those? Thank you.
Thanks, Katla. Any other hands in the room before we proceed to online questions? Okay, Kutwani, please take us through the questions.
Okay. The first question is from Terence Creamer from Engineering News. When will the revised coal decommissioning schedule be released? What are the key considerations and which stations will be affected? The second one from Terence. What does the passing of the ERA bill mean for electricity industry? And when will the president find a pen to sign the bill before the May 29th elections? The last question from Terence Creamer. Why is it necessary for Eskom to reserve grid capacity as per its application to do with NERSA? Another question from Helmo from Press Independent Media. Does Eskom anticipate a as 2005? And the last question also from Helmo. What is the current status of imports from Mozambique?
Okay, are those all the questions? I see Mobile is raising her hand as well.
to say. Hi, there you go. Um, so just maybe a quick update in terms of how the power stations are doing. Sorry, doing Medala from Newsroom Africa. Just maybe an update in terms of how the power stations are doing in terms of power generation. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Maureen. And colleagues, thanks for all the questions. We'll now get responses. We'll start with ESCOM, and then we'll be followed by response.
The grid is stabilized, and then based on that, and then as the grid stabilized, we will, and then other additional megawatts come through, we will then factor those decommissioning date. But at least now we have created a space where we will keep this plant maintained up until 2018, and then the actual date, obviously, we will communicate closer to the dates. And then the issue of how the stations performs is what the minister just explained this morning. I think they compared to those scripted days, the combinations of all the stations, the fact that we moved from where we were, show you in May last year when we were addressing the public where the figures were and where we are today. That is the combinations of all the stations performance. It's not one power station, it's the whole fleet starting to move in the right direction as well. Yeah, I think the issues of investigation is in my post, but I think that one, like you rightfully said, Katlego, that there is investigation by different organs of the state and ESCOM itself. I think that process is still ongoing. I think for now, I think let's wait for those undertaking. I'm sure the organizations will come and then explain once everything has been finalized, rather than to deal with the portion of individual cases across the Africa. But I think as part of this briefing, obviously that follows the different process in terms of the whole fleet of investigations that can be then shared with the public as they get finalized. Let me allow my colleague Monde to deal with the issue of the great connectivity before Minister will hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Zute. Good morning. Yeah, maybe let me just start off by saying that grid capacity is available throughout the country. There is sufficient grid capacity across the country. We do have a challenge with specific areas in the Northern Cape and the Western Cape, where there is some level of grid congestion. So we undertook an exercise post the publication of the grid capacity assessment report to find ways of saying how can we accelerate these grid connections by looking at interventions to create this grid capacity in the short term, whilst we're busy rolling out the transmission development plan. So that culminated in a published addendum to the grid capacity assessment report that indicated that there was to some 3.4 gigawatts that has been identified, wherein we'll be able to connect through a mechanism called curtailment. So that then we know what has happened with the previous big windows when grid capacity quickly became unavailable because of the saturation in terms of applications. That then necessitated us to find a mechanism of saying how do we ensure that we give effect to what has been determined by the minister in terms of the ministerial determination. So which is the reason why we are applying for this grid reservation, so that we can find a mechanism of ensuring that we reserve the grid for the connections that are specifically identified as part of that program. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mande. Thanks for that. Let me just also deal with the issues of the winter weather is going to be warm. Well, I think we are seeing the increase in the demand. The system operator team, they do follow the forecast both internally and also from the Weather Bureau. So for us is to get those indications and, on a weekly basis, and then we plan the capacity around that. But I can't say now how is it going to be going forward. But we have seen that it's starting to increase the demand. And then lastly, Minister, I want to deal with the issue of the current import. Currently from Mozambique, we're getting 1,200 megawatts that we're getting from HCB as part of the fleet as well. Thank you, Minister.
Just to a question from Terence on the passing of the era. I think that the plan will be ready for the president to put this into effect. And what does it mean? So it means a number of things. So what we know, what the ERA does is the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act. What it does is to reconfigure the energy space in the country. So, of course, it removes the 100-year monopoly that ESCOM has enjoyed over a period of time, especially on the generation side. And then it establishes two main principles of how you are going to deal with the new generators, new players in the ecosystem. It introduces the principles of equity and fairness on how these players are able to access the grid. Because the National Transmission Company of South Africa can expand more on that, but what the ERA does is to introduce those two key principles. And then the second one is that it democratizes energy generation in the country. Like I said, we are going to have multiple generators, and then we are also going to have multiple off-takers. And what are likely going to be the benefits of that? Multifold, and I'll just mention the few. The first one is it's likely going to be increased levels of investments in the South African economy because investors and the liquidity that is because the regulatory framework now makes it possible for them certainty, and in that way, I think you are likely levels of investments. And then the second one is that as a result of the multiple players, they want to be competitive. So you are going to find that there's greater levels of technology adoption, and with the greater levels of technology adoption, we are likely going to see greater levels of efficiency in delivering, in producing electricity. And what that means is that the net could be, it's not necessarily a given, but the net could be that you don't see the kind of exponential increases in energy prices in the country because there's multiple players, there's multiple generators. They are going to be, they all want to be price competitive because they want to attract the PPAs, and I think that you're likely going to see that the tariff increases, I think, will dampen or at least not necessarily grow at the rate at which we are experiencing it today. So I think it's both revolutionary and transformational, the effect of the ERA. So we're looking forward to the president signing that into law, and then the market will take shape going into the future. Thanks.
Minister and the esteemed representatives of ESCOM, Mr. Ngumalo and Mr. Bala. Colleagues, I believe the questions have been answered. However, we'll take the last round of questions for any further follow-ups and further clarity. We'll start in the room once again. I see Katleho. Any other hands? So we'll take Katleho and then we'll go to Kutwano for any other questions on the online platform.
giving us a sense of the work that they're doing on the ground. They've already identified certain hotspots here that are going to be proving to be a little bit problematic. Is this something that you guys have picked up as well to say, in terms of your energy provision during the elections, there may be certain areas that are going to prove to be challenging? And is that something that you communicated with the IEC in terms of the work that you're going to be doing to ensure credible elections on May 29th?
Thanks, Katlawa.
There's a follow-up question from Terence Creamer from Engineering News. Given that coal decommissioning is a policy issue, which also affects other policy decisions, under what policy mandate did the board extend the schedule for Ndrina, Port Vlei, and Camden? A question from Benin Erasmus from Business Day. Can the minister please clarify what likely are the next steps will be after the failed appeal against the load shedding judgment? Last question from Peter Fabricius from Daily Maverick. How much is it costing the state to keep running the diesel generators at full capacity to avoid load shedding?
Last question has been clarified. Then, Katleo, just for clarity, are you referring to the IEC or IDC? Okay, thanks. Sure, thanks. We'll take responses. Once again, we'll start with colleagues from ESCOM, followed by the Minister.
Thanks, Katleo, for the question. Yeah, I think, as was previously communicated, we're working quite closely with the IEC in the planning for all electricity-related logistics around the election. We are supporting the IEC so that they can do what they need to do in preparation for the election. We are aware of certain hotspots, and again, we are working with the IEC to deal with whatever contingencies that may be required to deal with particular hotspots. But it is situational, and we've got all the sort of plans to deal with whatever situation that may arise on the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Thanks, Sakani. I think, Terence, the issue of the running the stations, as you rightfully said, that there is a policy that stations are currently run is part of that policy. We're working together as a ESCOM with the colleagues in DMRE as we put these plans out before we take them to board. So there is no contradiction between the policy and what we are currently doing within ESCOM to run this plant further. Yeah, I think also the minister can talk to the policy broadly, but yeah, currently there is no contradiction. Then on the issue of diesel, I'm not too sure, maybe I thought the minister was quite eloquent to explain how the diesel is being run, but these diesels, they are designed for specific purpose. They are part of the whole fleet. I think it's important that we don't separate them from how the system is run. They are there, they are designed in all of their numbers. So they've got responsibility, there's certain functions that they play to deal with the emergencies and also to fulfill other functions for the grid stability as well. So currently they are being used according to the way they are being dealt with, not only to deal with load shedding. I think it's important to recognize that important considerations when we deal with any other emergency like renewables. The minister said it's the whole that makes the country energy as well. So they are utilized as they are designed for. So currently there is no risk really in terms of how the diesel generators in the OCGT plants are being utilized. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much. Just on the policy question, of course, having visited the power stations and engaged with ESCOM, say there has to be a delayed decommissioning of these units. And of course, as Mr. Nkumalo has indicated, the board has given them the green light and they'll do an assessment in the future on what constitute, if you like, the future prospects of these units to continue to generate. And then there was another policy question. And so government has committed itself to the following, which is really a nexus of the energy calculus globally and also in the country. Of course, it's got different manifestation in the country because it takes into account the country's conditions. Energy access, and of course, in the global south and in our country, it's receiving significant preeminence. So by that I mean universal access. Everyone must be connected to the grid. Everyone must receive electricity. So we know that there's about 7% of 7% of the households that are yet to be connected, especially those in the rural hinterland and new settlements in the peri-urban centers. And then the other dimension of the nexus is that of energy security. By that we mean our ability to be able to meet our own energy demand to allow the economy to grow. Whatever we do, it will take that into account. So as a point I'm making is that it can be that in a situation of energy deficit, then you choose to close down the power stations that are giving you the megawatts. I think there's something incoherent about that particular argument. So what we need is continue to give us those megawatts so that we can sustain the South African economy. It mustn't collapse. And the second area of the third dimension of the nexus is that of green transition. So I'm saying it's a nexus because you must resolve all of these things together. So you mustn't elevate one over the other. So it can be about ecological and environmental issues. They are very important, but it's also about access. It's also about energy security. Is the socio-economic element, socio-economic consideration, and the growth prospects. So whatever you do, part of the nexus, it must address the four: access, security, clean sources, if you like, the transition, and the economic and social conditions, so that whatever decision you make, you don't decimate a geography as a result of an economic anchor not performing its function, and then it's got spillover effects to other areas of society's experiences. So that's the nexus we are resolving. So that's a bigger policy question. The ESCOM is confined to ensuring that they give us the megawatts. And as Mr. Newman has indicated, the board has done that consideration and given that extension. And at the right time, they'll continue to reformulate and recalibrate what does the timelines mean from a modeling point of view of emissions, the cost of running those coal-fired power stations, and they'll make decisions that are in the interest of ESCOM, and then we'll make decisions that are in the interest of the country. And of course, the policy ESCOM will subordinate to the bigger policy question that the state would have taken. So let me once more take the opportunity to thank everyone who has been able to join us this morning. Thank members of the media for making time. You are a conduit to make it possible for us to communicate with the rest of the country, and to thank members of the media, those who have asked questions. Thank you very much for your question. And then I did make the point on the issue of the judgment that will take you from what the legal advice we are getting, and then I'll make known what that position is after we complete those consultations. So thank you very much to everyone. Thanks, Taka.
Colleagues, with that, we've come to the end of the truly do to being conduits of keeping Africans informed on the implementation of the Energy Action Plan. Thank you to Mr. Nyati and Mr. Marukana and all of ESCOM for allowing us to have our appointment with members of the Fourth Estate here at Megawatt Park. Thank you.